Hi everyone, I'm doing my talk today basically on transitions. So in life we have many transitions. We have transitions when our parents die. We have transitions when we reach milestones in our birthdays. We have transitions when we lose jobs, when we move homes, we move countries. So transitions can be painful, they can be hard. With Covenant House, which is one of the organizations I had applied to for many years to work with, they deal with children. So children that come to Toronto thinking that it's going to be easy here, they're going to get good jobs, and they land up on the streets or they land up being trafficked. And some of them go through, parents being remarried or divorces or whatever, and that pain becomes too much for them to deal with, so they turn to other things. And I think in all of our lives, if we don't have that support around us, if we don't have that nurturing, that love, it can become very debilitating. I think if you have your faith, it makes it easier for you. And I know for me, that has been my greatest strength, because inevitably, if you go, like if I go and I talk to my aunts and uncles about how I'm struggling in my relationship with my mother, they're not going to support me. They're going to support her. So it's better to just take it into prayer and put it into God's hands, because they're not going to support you. I know with me, when my mother got remarried, I found it very hard. I found it hard at the wedding. I found it hard afterwards, because she made it clear that she wasn't interested anymore. She did her duty, and she would invite me if and when they had time. And the same thing with when my sister got married. My sister kept in touch with my mother. So whatever photos she sent, whatever news I got, it was through my mother. And it's not easy for anybody. I still miss my cousins that I grew up with in Zimbabwe, because we used to get together, we would go out. We didn't have all our celebrations together. They didn't come home for everything. But for the majority of them, my cousins, Kathy, Cynthia, Carol, Christopher, they used to come home and we used to enjoy ourselves. We used to have a nice time together. So it's difficult when you go through those transitions if you don't have your faith. But if you have your faith, and if you know that there is always someone who loves you, it makes a world of a difference in your life, in your outlook. Because before, I used to try to help my mother to understand that the way she was talking about us was not, it was making it like she was alone and it was her and us children. Or she would say, like, Daryl and I are doing this, you people do what you want. And I gave up, because in the end it wasn't helping me, and she was just getting more and more upset. So like when you talk about your children, you talk about your marriage, it used to hurt me when she used to say, oh, that's my first husband's daughter. So, and she's talking to the man she's married to now. And even when they tell me things like, oh, Anita, your sister said she was going to have a party and then she didn't have it for your mother, I'm like, you know what? It's got nothing to do with me. Or if people contact me from Zimbabwe asking me, is your niece married? I'm like, why don't you ask her mother? How should I know if she's married or not? I'm not her mother. So I just gave up. I just gave up. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let this get to me. I have enough health problems to deal with. I have enough of a financial problem to deal with. And I just tell them now, you know what? I don't like it, but there's nothing I can do, because the language, the way you talk about somebody either includes them or it excludes them. So it is important. And for the first years of my life when I came to Canada, I was always with my sister for Christmases, for birthdays, for occasions. And I have those memories with them. But once my mother came, because my mother gets upset with me for things that are not even my fault, she gets upset. So then the family get all up in arms, and then they're like, just stay away, okay? We don't want her getting upset. Can't you see how you're upsetting your mother? But I'm not upsetting her, she's getting upset because she doesn't like something about the way I am or how I approach things or how I do things. But I'm not her and I'm not them. So it's better for me to just stay out of it. Even like when we go, or when we used to go to America, my sister always made sure that she cooked. She took things with us. We took gifts, we took food. We didn't go there and just be a burden on others. There's very few times that I have gone to America without making sure that I contribute to whoever's household I'm staying in. So it's important to remember that we're coming from different backgrounds. And when you live in a country, you become like the people in that country. Because you have to adapt. If you don't adapt to how they are, then, life doesn't work. And you'll find a lot of people will say that when they go home, when they go back to Zimbabwe or South Africa, then they can be completely themselves. And when they're here, they're not completely themselves. And the Canadians will say, no, you must be yourself, you must be yourself. But then when you are yourself, they don't like you. They don't like your approach. They don't like how when you're formal, they don't like what you're doing. So it becomes a case of, well, you can say one thing, but the reality is very different. And so for me, I'm fortunate in that I've had friends who have been married and then divorced and remarried, some of them. So they've helped me to understand what they've gone through and how they've transitioned with their own families. Because for some children, it's not easy. Some children land up becoming drug addicts. They land up drinking. They land up hurting themselves because of decisions that their parents have made. And that's why it's important for us when we're going through transitions, whether it's unemployment, remarriages, divorces, whatever it is, to keep our faith and to keep that faith in the Lord, because the Lord is the one that will always guide us and help us, and that will bring the right people into our lives. Even with me now, I tell Teleperformance I want to go back, because the reality is that my mother wants her husband to feel comfortable. Her focus is on him. So she will invite me when it's convenient for him and her. And if I'm not up to it, if I'm sick or whatever, now I tell them. Before, even when I was sick, I used to go. And especially when the whole family was coming, I always used to be the one to make the effort and to go. But they left me out. They went many times to Prospect, to America, when my brother came, and they left me out. They made all the plans, and I was expected to come if I wanted to come. And if I didn't want to come, they don't care really too much, because they've got their own families and their own lives, and it was me who made the effort every time to go to see them, to spend time with them. And out of the little I have, I gave whatever I could. So it's important to remember that in life, we don't always get back what we give out to others. And it's not just about saying, oh, it's your circumstances, because our circumstances are man-made, and people like me have been trying to change it. We've been trying to make things better, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Because the decisions we make today are going to affect our nieces, our nephews, our cousins' children that are coming up. It's going to affect them. And I understand you say, oh, well, we sit under trees that a generation before us has planted. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean that we have to not value our own lives and not cherish our own lives and our own dreams and our own goals and aims. It doesn't mean that. And even Nelson Mandela said that poverty is man-made and man can take the steps to change it. It is up to us, because if we don't change it, no one else is going to change it. For many of us, including me, losing Bono on the board was a big change. If you look at the One campaign now, it's not about big bands and musicians coming together and that voice of freedom coming through the music. It's very different. So yes, they're still tapping into some of the things they did in the past with Mandela, with Bono, with things that we used back then. But now there's a voice of a woman in the advert that has been promoted since he stepped down. And there's a different focus coming in. So it's a hard transition for people like me, and especially for me, because I love Bono. And people shouldn't take that out of context. They shouldn't take it like, oh yeah, now look at this. What about everybody else? Because that's not the way that it is. And it's inappropriate, actually, because that ideology and that way of doing things has stopped me from being promoted. It stopped me from getting jobs. It's ruined my reputation in a lot of places. And it's unacceptable, because I don't deserve it. And I deserve to work, to earn my own living, to come up in life, and to be independent and self-sufficient, not to keep on going back to the same thing over and over and over. I let other people live their lives in freedom, and I don't hold people back from being promoted. And I've watched a lot of people be promoted over me, even though I had more skills than them, more qualifications than them, better attitudes than them, because they had the sponsors in place in the organizations. And they also used tenure to get what they wanted. So the world has changed, and we have to adapt to that change. For many of us, it was hard. It was hard to let Bono go. It was hard for me to hear the people in the church saying, oh, she's not with Bono anymore. It was hard. It wasn't easy. But I stayed with the One campaign. I made the transition. And I'm making the transitions as I can. But for me, I put God in the center of my life. I put the Lord Jesus in the center of my life. It was a hard transition when my mother left me in Bulawayo, when I lived with the De Silvas, and I used to walk 10 blocks every day to go from the college to their place. But I looked for the good in it. I embraced them, and I fell in love with their family. Their family fell in love with me. So you make the transitions, and lots of people, lots of men and women get married, and they move continents. My brother is living in England, because that's where his wife's family is. My sister is living here. She came here because that's where her husband's family is. So they have that support around them. They have that network around them to help them to make that transition. It's very hard when you're like me and you're doing it on your own, because nobody's opening the doors for me. Nobody's helping me to get jobs. Nobody's helping me to say, yes, we know her, we worked with her, and we'd love to have her at EY, or we'd love to have her with TELUS. Nobody's doing that for me, so I have to promote myself. I have to market my skills, what I bring to the table, what transitions I've made, how I've made them successfully. Even with the church, I tried to do what Father Peter Taroni did at Newman Center. I tried to set up book clubs. I tried to do that as an individual. I also offered to do it in my church. But the priests are running the church. So they chose who they wanted to lead those things. And it wasn't me. So now I have my John Maxwell, the same way I have my Primerica, or I had my Primerica. And so that's mine. I can take that and I can control it, and I can make my videos, and I can send out my flyers and reach out to organizations, and hopefully I get that support. If it's not here, hopefully it will be in Africa. But I won't give up on my dreams, and I won't give up on what I want for my life, because I do not believe in a God that wants crime and poverty and ill health and unnecessary pressure. I mean, at one point when we were working in the call center at Teleperformance, they only kept 20 of us on. So for that huge amount of calls and emails and chats, imagine the pressure that we were under. But I didn't have anything else to go to, so I stayed there. And you can say, well, it's your fault, you stayed there. So what was the alternative? The alternative was to be in the place I'm in now, where I don't have an income coming in, I don't have anything else to go to, and sitting at home sending out thousands of applications. So, and I did help EY when they had the Africa Rising, the DIRCO for South Africa. He introduced me to them, and he told them she's looking for work. I think she would be good with you guys. They made the introduction, the South Africans, because they wanted me to work with James Newlands. And he said no. He said, you stay in South Africa, I'll talk to my contacts and we'll try to get you into the Canadian EY. That didn't happen. So a lot of people, and it's not just me that goes through this. There's a lot of the South Africans, Zimbabweans, and the DIRCO told me, the Consular General told me when I met him, he said, we tried to make the introductions, we tried to get our South Africans who are successful to bring people like you in because you're helping us, and it just doesn't come about. It just doesn't seem to happen. Many people end up coming home because they just can't make ends meet, they don't get the support. And you people have good attitudes, you have good values, you're doing right by Canada, so we don't know what to do. So I've reached that point where if I can't work in management here and I can't earn a good salary and I can't come up, it's not, you can't do it without the support of the church and the management and the people who are already in the successful positions. Even with the book clubs that I tried to set up, even when I tried to join CLC, they said, we'll get back to you. They never came back to me. And then we set up our own Vespers, so now we don't have that anymore. But it's transitions. We go through transitions, and we have to adjust to them, and we have to move on. So I'm hoping that I get a job with Teleperformance in South Africa. They do have some positions where they offer relocation. I know I've seen their positions like in Sweden, Switzerland, and they're good top management positions. So if I can get something like that, that would be good for me. Because really and truly, I don't like this. I don't like taking money from people. I don't like hearing, I can't keep doing this for you. I don't like, I mean, if it was up to me, I would be in a job. I would be earning my own living. I don't have a choice. And I'm not just applying here in Canada. I'm applying in America. I'm applying in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, to all the non-profits that are working there, the banks, the foundations. I'm not just sitting back and saying, well, there's nothing I can do. So I'm hoping and praying that I get that break and that God gives me that opportunity to earn my own living and to have the financial success. Because, I mean, even my trousers, the trousers are old, I mend them. I take a needle and thread and I sew them. And I do whatever I can to create a good life for myself and others. If I was only focusing on my own life, I wouldn't be volunteering, I wouldn't be helping. There's many, many organizations I've helped over the years. I helped with Out of the Cold, Fred Victor, Young Street Mission, Wildlife Preservation Canada, Greener City. There's many, many organizations I've helped that have benefited Canada. So I'm hoping and praying that I get that break, because when you're over 50 and you've got nothing, it's not a good place to be. And believe you me, the people with money, they lord it over you. So I want to be with people who are humble, people who come out and they meet their constituents and they want to be there for the people, not the people like Justin Trudeau and the leadership we have now that are flying all over the world and staying in fancy hotels, and everyone criticizes the African leaders. They do the same thing here. So more power to them. Why shouldn't the African leaders have lands and companies and wealth and property? Those are blessings from God also, as long as you're not abusing and doing corruption. They're blessings. Poverty is a curse. And I'm trying my best to get out of this situation, because I've been doing good by Canada and I've been doing right by Canada, and I'm not getting the rewards. I'm not getting what I deserve in this country. So if I get an opportunity to go and work at home for a while, maybe it will work out and I can go to South Africa and I can stay there, because I'm tired of it. Transitions are made easier when we have people who have gone through it that we can learn from. Because really and truly, when I look back now, I don't blame Mandela and all these people for becoming revolutionaries. Because it was, to be treated so awfully. Even as a child, I hated it and I spoke up, and they used to tell me, my mom used to tell me, keep quiet, don't say anything. I said, no, I'm not going to keep quiet. What about me? What about my life? And she came from India, so India had independence a long time before Africa got independence. And yet still today the women there are oppressed. It's ridiculous. 20,000 students came here and they don't know where they are. They're probably working under the table and they're all Indian. Muslims are blocking our streets, playing on the roads. What, is this a backwards country? Human rights, whose human rights? It's time things changed, and it's time things change for me, for the better.